This presentation is about research regarding the self-perception of a developing teacher presence in entry-year teachers. Considering educator preparation, we really have two competing models for educator preparation in almost every state. We have the traditional program, which is typically the longer term program for undergraduate students. It's usually campus based. Sometimes it has a hybrid set of courses that include elements of online education. However, most of the time, this traditional experience is anchored with enriched field experiences as well as times out in the field where the candidate within the program can see experienced teachers work with students and negotiate things that experienced teachers must negotiate within the profession of teaching. The competing model is the alternative certification program. Almost every state offers this. In many cases, it can be exclusively online or based on modular understanding of experiences that are manufactured and presented in a student learning portal. However, there are some alternative certification programs that require their candidates to engage in field experiences. Oftentimes, these candidates may already be employed in some sort of teaching capacity, and they are going through the alternative certification as a stipulation of the state in which they're teaching. So there is a variety of differences between a traditional program and what we might consider a typical alternative certification program. To provide context for the study, we really need to define what meaningful field experiences are. And the research would suggest that field experiences which are anchored in a particular instructional purpose certainly serve as a capacity of meaningful field experiences. And even as we mentioned in the previous slide, that traditional programs don't always have meaningful field experiences. They're not always anchored in something that is substantive for the candidate. However, we are seeing in the research that more often educator preparation programs are now providing that meaningful anchored field experiences for their candidates, which in turn produces an authenticity, and that's the second component of meaningful field experiences, an authenticity from which the candidate can learn specific do's and don'ts of the field within the profession. For this particular study and the research that spurred this presentation, we're looking at a year-long practicum. Many educator preparation programs, whether they be traditional, mainly traditional, but whether they be traditional or alternative certification programs, are trending to a year-long practicum that allows that intern or student teacher to experience as much time in the classroom, not just the 12 to 15 week minimal experience oftentimes associated with student teaching. The year-long practicum certainly is an expansion on a meaningful practicum set of experiences. It's also helping develop the relationship between that candidate and the mentor, which is essential in the culminating experience of a practicum. There is a transition of responsibility, something that you may not see within that 12 to 15 week student teaching capacity or internship, whereas the candidate gradually assumes roles and responsibilities of the classroom and transitions into the primary teacher of the classroom. Oftentimes, also, the research might suggest co-teaching, which can provide an element of support and encouragement. However, co-teaching also can be distracting from the candidate assuming the primary role of the teacher, as students don't always see that teaching candidate separate from their actual assigned classroom teacher. So the gradual increase of responsibilities is essential in the year-long practicum. There is an expectation of practical application methodology, something that sometimes is lost within a short-term practicum, as well as there's the management theory that with short-term practicums, classroom management is also minimized, or the understanding of classroom management can also be compromised or minimized in the sense that the candidate maybe inherits the mentor teacher's expectations of classroom management, or the candidate is unable to establish their own management plan because they are essentially leasing space in the classroom. As part of the year-long practicum, these are the components that we hope to build on and see as meaningful experiences for both traditional candidates as well as alternative certification candidates. And this research considers these year-long practicums as the component that is most influential in regarding the self-perception of a teacher presence. To better understand the methodology of the study, there were 22 case studies in a combination of two states, Colorado and Texas. Both were in suburban areas. The sample was certainly representative of the demographic of that particular geographic region. They were based on a combination of interviews with the different participants, as well as specific classroom observations in the participant's classroom, as well as during their candidacy in their internship, the feedback that was provided by their specific mentor. They were in a combination of a pre-internship or pre-student teaching capacity, along with a student teaching and internship capacity. The pre-student teaching or pre-internship consisted of a minimum of 160 field hours, and then the student teaching or the internship culminated in a minimum of 600 field hours. And that pre-student teaching pre-internship to student teaching internship was with the same mentor in the same school. So regarding the results of the study, there were four primary areas that became apparent from the interviews, as well as the field observation instruments and mentor feedback. First being teacher presence, and teacher presence in this particular study references the confidence of the teacher to be able to engage in the requirements of that particular field-based candidacy, whether it be requirements in the classroom or just on campus or within the district itself, as well as the second thing being a ability to utilize instructional differentiation. Something that can be very difficult to assume immediately in a shortened candidacy or internship, as well as the candidate felt a better understanding of the particular school setting. For instance, the culture of that particular campus and the expectations of the administration, as well as the expectations of team assignments or the culminating team preparatory meetings in relation to the content, as well as with those things emerged a relationship built, more confidence in their ability to build relationships with not only their students, but also their team or their mentor or colleagues on that particular campus. So the primary thing that most candidates who participated in the study felt confident or felt more confident in their ability to perform just basic classroom responsibilities, that oftentimes a minimized or shortened field experience or internship or student teaching capacity does not allow, and that would be the ability for a teacher to develop a sense of multitasking among all the different things that are happening in the classroom that does not compromise a level of instructional fluidity. So trying to maintain that balance between all the different things that are going on in the classroom as well as high-level instruction, and then being able to transition from minimal instructional distractions in the classroom. That was the primary feedback that was received from the candidates who were participating in the study, is they saw emerging and strengthening in their own ability to teach in the classroom. In relation to differentiation, 9 of the 22 from the sample really felt that their differentiated strategies that were part of the framework of their courses were not necessarily encouraged while they were in the capacity of their internship or student teaching capacity. Some of their mentors actually discouraged some of the differentiated instruction that was taught to them during their coursework. Others expressed a better understanding, certainly, of the school culture and policies and the requirements that the district had established in regards to management, as well as behavioral discipline, as well as professional development. With the extended time in the classroom and with the extended time with the mentors, as well as in specific meetings, whether they're departmental meetings, team meetings, or faculty meetings, this certainly helped the candidate better understand within the profession what is expected from them on a particular campus, or some of the elements that define a campus culture. In regards to relationship building, certainly we speak to this as if it is a disposition that's easy for people in the profession to be able to do, and that's not necessarily the case. And certainly that came back as feedback regarding from not only the mentors, but in the observations, as well as the interviews with the different candidates that went through the year-long internship, is that there were some things that certainly influenced positively their ability to build relationships on campus in regards to the students as well as their colleagues. Candidates listed factors such as the different personalities of the people with whom they encounter, again, whether it be students or colleagues or administrators. The different elements of campus culture. There are certain things that produce a positive campus culture, and that help to provide a basis for relationship building. The demographics, as I mentioned in the previous component of the methodology, that these teachers were a good representation of the geographic region in which they teach. So with that, the cultural classroom demographics seem to be reinforcing of the ability to create and establish relationships, meaningful relationships with students as well as colleagues. And sometimes several reference the time of day as being able to compromise. In other words, there were some who were able to establish relationships based on when class started, the time of the day that learning began or concluded, which can be equated to a little bit of what the campus culture would be. And what we saw from the study was, again, an emerging self-perception for entry year level teachers. Some things to consider would be that the longer the practicum, oftentimes the more authentic experiences for the intern. And that's not always the case. There are things that the educator preparation program will have to do in order to be able to establish those. Certainly, you get candidates that may be aligned with a weak mentor. That can be that situation can be assessed during the pre-internship or pre-student teaching component of the internship, and perhaps replaced with a stronger mentor in the second component of the internship. So those are things to consider. That the longer the practicum does not always lead to a more authentic experience, but it certainly in this particular study lended itself to be true. Secondly, mentors start to emerge more as instructional coaches. Earlier we mentioned where some of the mentors were discouraging different types of differentiated instruction. However, the majority seem to embrace the idea of coaching their student, teacher, or intern. And this part of it is because the mentor learned to be a mentor. Some of the mentors were experienced mentors and had certainly had student teachers in the past. However, some of those student teachers in the past were on a minimized candidacy or minimized student teaching or internship. So the year-long exposure allowed that mentor to grow into their mentorship, and certainly the new mentors found this as an opportunity to be the experience with the novice and really coach them in areas so that they can improve and strengthen. The third component actually can be reciprocal. Competence leads to preparedness, and preparedness leads to competence. And the more time that you have to be exposed to areas that require preparedness, require preparation and planning, and that preparation and planning bears fruit in the classroom, that self-perception of confidence and the growing aspect of the teacher presence starts to emerge. Deeper instructional components may need to be integrated with specific classroom contexts, and again, that goes back to the differentiated instruction. Sometimes there are elements of teacher prep programs that we assume are working and that they will be embraced during the component of an internship or a student teaching capacity, and that's not necessarily the case. And we need to have those conversations with mentors as well as leaders and stakeholders in our program to better understand what it is that they expect from our candidates as they enter the classroom, and some of the things that we really need our candidates to do and experience once they are in the classroom. That's a working relationship and conversation and dialogue for sure. The year-long practicums certainly encourage deeper and more meaningful experiences while the candidate is in the field. And with this deeper and more enriched exposure to the classroom and campus culture, we start to again see candidates who see an emerging confidence in teacher presence as their ability to metacognitively reflect on their level of thinking as well as their level of preparedness and how they plan on preparing. So really, ultimately, this particular study reveals that a year-long practicum for educator preparation seems to be a very beneficial component that leads to emerging confidence as well as a reflective self-perception on the inter-year teacher. Certainly, we thank you for participating in this presentation. We hope that you were able to gain some insight on elements of year-long practicums and how they benefit, as well as some of the growing dialogue and necessary dialogue that will continue to emerge. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dr. Byford or Dr. Horn. The emails are there on the slide, and we certainly appreciate, again, your time that's invested in this presentation.